I think at UCF, one of the things that we strive to teach to our students is that power of creativity and the power of listening to others from different viewpoints.
Try to talk to some of the people who are not exactly like you, which means that, if you're just talking to people with similar mindset, right, probably you will not be able to get a lot of new ideas.
I want to be sure that my students remember that America is not the only game in town. Whether you're talking about Latin America, Asia, Western Europe, Africa, and the continent of Australia, we certainly can learn from their abilities, their approach to problem solving, and their inclusivity in a way that we should always be sensitive to.
My encouragement for students all around UCF is to find other students from different programs and be able to find those project-based learning moments where you get to work on something that's really meaningful. In our context here at Limitless, that's what we're striving to do, is trying to solve really big challenges, and we're hopeful for as many viewpoints and voices as possible.
You got to think about where the hockey puck's going. What's next? So creative, innovative people are futuristic. They're not about what's happening right now. So think about what's next. What category is next, or what category can you reshape, tweak, and flip it?
80% of victims that are rescued from sex trafficking are rescued from hotels and lodging. So with the support of Dean Wong, we actually made it a mission of the college to be the leaders in human trafficking education and hospitality and tourism. And we got to work. So all 3,500 students who are the future leaders of the hospitality and tourism industry, they're the future general managers of hotels, the future directors of convention centers and destination management organizations, future GMs of hotel, restaurants and theme parks, and they'll have the skills to be able to identify, report, and end human trafficking. It's one thing to have the education and training, but it's the next thing to be able to report it. And we're training strong, very strong leaders that will have that in them to be able to report if they do see something. When we think about our students and about creativity, they are really leading the way. They are innovators already. So they know the newest trends in technology. They know the newest trends within their different disciplines of hospitality and tourism that they're working in. So really, I just feed that creativity and allow them to blossom.
So I've had students who I've asked to maybe create something in a project, and they're like, I can't create it. I don't draw. I don't know. I mean, I'm just not a good artist, and all these things that they will say. And I would say to them, I don't care if you give me your best stick figure drawing, but if you put yourself into it, then the outcome will be seen.
I don't hand out assignments or projects. I let them come up with their own and then see what they can do. I say, look, give me your best product, okay? Whatever that looks like. Give me your best presentation. I don't care if it's a PowerPoint, a Prezi, you get up here and do a play, I don't care. Whatever is the best product for you.
There is such an emphasis right now on project-based learning because it helps drive the way we approach problems and the way we work together to solve problems. I think for many students, and my own experience included, the capstone projects tend to be the ones where we have that aha moment of this is what it means to be able to support a teammate, to work together. And I hope that more people will be able to develop those kind of project-based learnings earlier on in their collegiate career, so they get better practice with that early.
This is not about an A. This is about you becoming who you say you want to be when you entered into this program.
I think to me, creativity is just not being afraid. It's taking those chances, stepping outside the things that you used to do, and just acknowledging that, sometimes things are going to work and sometimes they're not. And it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you tried something, and trying things is always important and always good.
You can't be creative and innovative if you're afraid of making a mistake. So you have to look at it as a process.
Getting that hands-on experience, trying it out, having opportunities to fail over and over again, recognizing that I'm still learning from each opportunity and that it's not necessarily a failure when there's a learning component to it and that I can actually take something away from that experience. And so within my classes, I really work hard to create that same similar opportunity.
One of my favorite quotes from Thomas Edison was he was asked if he ever failed when he was putting a light bulb together, inventing the light bulb. And he said, "I've never failed. I just know 9,999 ways that don't work." So if you look at everything you do as you're learning something, then you're able to take those chances and be creative and maybe discover the next light bulb. We do certainly provide treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD at UCF Restores. And one of the things we're always doing is trying to figure out how to make the treatment better. And so one of the things we've done over the last few years has integrated virtual reality into the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's unusual for something like virtual reality to be used as part of therapy. Most people don't think about virtual reality as part of therapy. But what we've found is that by using that, we're able to make our therapy more powerful and therefore have people have a much better response.
So our industry is always thinking outside of the box. Look at with events and engagement with augmented reality and immersive experiences where you go into an event space and it's immersed into a different environment. And these things are all ways to just enhance our event experience. But there's something that can be said for human contact, and people will always want to travel. And the difference in our industry is you can't put on video the experience of walking into those gates at Disney World. Or you can't put on a video the experience of going to a luxury spa at the Ritz-Carlton. So no matter what trends and technology happen, we are the hospitality and tourism industry. We have that touch, that special engagement and entertainment that no matter how much technology put into it, won't ever replace the in-person actual activity. So we are creative in getting those activities and engagement, but it will always be that in-person that really makes our industry awesome.
I think what's really at the foundation of our training program is constant creative problem solving.
It's that ability to look at a problem and realize that one train of thought, not even just a discipline, but one focus may not be what's needed there. You may need to branch out.
Creativity comes when we bring in a lot of different perspectives and diverse viewpoints, and that helps us be able to find solutions that may be more common in one field than in another.
I teach counseling courses, and so one of the things that has to happen is someone to be able to think fast on their feet.
How do you help a client who is previously stuck in accomplishing a goal kind of get unstuck? And I think creativity is really the only solution to that problem.
Unfortunately, patients don't necessarily follow the textbook the way that we would want them to replicate an actual illness. That just doesn't work that way. And so we want to teach our students problem solving. That's one of the nice ways of using simulation, is because they can really experience what a situation looks like and be able to use their own problem solving and decision making capabilities in a simulation.
I challenge the students to really allow their creative side to come to bear. And what that means is that they stop standing in their own way to make things happen.
We find students sometimes bring creativity that we don't anticipate. So they have an idea or a solution for a problem that we're struggling with, and it's something that really paid professionals who've been doing this for years don't necessarily see. And I think one of the things that we try to do at WUCF with students is get them to use that muscle a little bit more and get them to be confident about using it.
They have to own it and trust their own creativity. It's not about whether or not I, as an instructor or someone who is receiving it, thinks they're creative. They have to feel it.
So when you're in your classes, think about not just what the teacher is telling you, not just the application that's in front of you. Also think about, well, how can I use this thing to solve this other problem that I'm having? How can I use this thing to just have fun with? Engineering is great in that way.
So one of the things that PBS does that's a little bit unique is, unlike many other television networks which tend to have sort of a narrow focus, right? The History Channel or the Food Channel or whatever, they have a very narrow focus in terms of the kind of programming that they create, whereas in our world, it's all sorts of different things. It could be Nova or Nature one night, it could be a concert another night, it could be masterpiece drama on another night. So there's always all sorts of different kinds of information and entertainment coming to you on WUCF. And so people don't often think of television maybe necessarily as being art, but it is, and it certainly can be. And so this idea of being sort of having a foot in both camps, where you're partly a technician and you're partly an artist, is something that really appeals to me and something that I like, and I feel very strongly that's core to what I like to do in creative expression, is to use technology to create something artistic.
When I first thought about teaching play therapy online, I said I would absolutely never ever do that. And then COVID hit and I had to change my mind, and I had to really think about, what does that look like?
Everything we did pre-pandemic was face-to-face. The work that we do is creating relationships, creating quality time for these couples to come into our place.
Normally, this is a team sport in television. So you have a group of people together in a building, and everybody's behind cameras or they're behind a switcher, and there are people in the studio in front of the camera. And all of that went away overnight.
Trying to teach something that really requires you to touch things and use equipment was something that was very difficult to do.
Our faculty members and the students have learned how to deal with this situation by integrating, technology and other digital platforms to support their teaching and learning activities.
I think the pandemic has really allowed us and forced us to think outside the box in terms of our tried and true methods, and found new ways of doing things, which ultimately have increased our depth and breadth, which is the ultimate goal.
The total benefit and silver lining of COVID in this way, and I'm obviously empathetic to people that have lost family members and friends, so that first and foremost, I respect the downside of COVID and the pandemic, but all these folks that are in my network and other people's networks that do what I do as a professor, you can just have them log on.
It's really opened the doors of possibilities. I think up until this semester, before I've had this opportunity, it limited our class sizes, it limited some of the things that we were able to do, because some students weren't able to take the extra elective or to have the time off of work in order to do that, or they lived too far away from Orlando in order to kind of make it here. And so it really has expanded the ability to provide this type of training beyond just those that live really close to the UCF's main campus.
We had to find ways to do interviews remotely. And so I think the benefit in doing all that, now that it's done, we don't ever have to go back. It gives us the flexibility of saying, well, we want to interview somebody who's in London, and that's fine, we can do that and still have people in the studio talking to somebody in London.
I discovered an app called Theodolite, and Theodolite is the main instrument that surveyors use. And thankfully, I was able to get funding from the university, from the college through the CARES Act, to allow me to send the materials to the students' homes and for them to download the app in order to do the lab.
So what I have found is it really has given me a platform to advocate on behalf of children. We have a collaboration with a dance studio here in Central Florida, and so we did an online little dance class that was super fun. And I think for our community partners, it was just a really important moment to do something positive in a year that has been so trying. So I think it was really uplifting for all of us to still be able to give kids the gift of mobility even in these really difficult circumstances.
I have been blessed with something called melanin in my skin, which has required me to be creative every day I go into the public arena. Whether it is going to the university or walking into an American embassy or walking into the Department of State in Washington, D.C., I often was creative in doing what we now call code switching. And that is, yes, I'm Harriet Elam Thomas, but I'm also a woman in a predominantly male environment, and I also defy a number of the norms. So I became creative out of a force of my profession and of my physical being. Living in predominantly male-oriented society, and this was not necessarily in Africa, this was in Istanbul, Turkey, where I was required to meet and converse with members of the Turkish press, all of whom were male, and there were very few females. And then at one point, I had to work with the editorial board of a predominantly Muslim and conservative fundamentalist Muslim newspaper to convince them to turn around their incorrect story about America, about the United States of America feeding terrorists. And my only thought was to first win their interest, because they didn't have to meet with me, they weren't keen on doing that, but also doing my homework so that I could throw out bits and pieces of their culture that they weren't expecting an American of any gender or any color to know, which kind of threw them off guard. And when I did that, then they were willing to listen to the criticisms that I needed to present based on my government about their incorrect description of what Americans were doing in Turkey, in northern Turkey. It worked. We had an apology in the Turkish newspaper the very next day, and my Turkish colleagues who had worked at the American Consulate General in Istanbul said that they had been there 30 years and they had never seen an apology written that actually was on the front page for something that their journalists had done.
So there's a lot of experiences that our students don't get in the clinical setting that we want them to have. For example, even though we want every student to see a baby being born, that may not be available during their clinical rotation. So we are able to replicate clinical experiences in a simulated setting that every student can experience. And it's a safe practice for students because no actual patients get harmed. So we do that in a lot of different ways. There's lots of different kinds of mannequins available out there. And so we can replicate a whole clinical scenario around a given diagnosis or diagnoses for students. As nurses, we're used to being creative. I think of being creative as thinking outside that box, and we'll do everything that we can to teach our students to do that and to really learn those problem-solving skills.